Hi, I'm Connor, and I'm so excited to announce that for the first time in my life, having ADHD and procrastinating everything all the time has finally paid off. You see, I was in the middle of making a video about, and by in the middle of, I mean I hadn't even started it yet, but I was going to make a video about why I think that there will be at least a few months in between Elon Musk buying 9.2% of Twitter and him ending up on the board of directors. If you recall, on Monday, April 4th, Elon Musk bought 9.2% of Twitter, and then the next day, yesterday, the CEO of Twitter announced that Elon Musk, the world's neediest pick-me billionaire, will be joining Twitter's board of directors. So it's a good thing I didn't make that video, because I would have been completely wrong. Well, not completely wrong, because I was actually like half right. Because as soon as I saw that he bought those shares, I immediately knew he was going to try to end up on the board of directors. Like, I immediately knew that was his goal. I just thought it would take a little longer because I didn't think Twitter would make that drastic of a change so quickly, given how high profile Elon Musk is and the risk of it potentially affecting their stock price. But clearly this was all prearranged and the decision making was done ahead of time. And while I am still curious about the stock price and Twitter's value long term, what I want to focus on in this video is why I think this is a potentially dangerous step in the wrong direction. Because it's easy to dismiss this as like a meme and, Elon Musk is going to buy Twitter. And I'll admit, I see some of the humor in it. He knows that people want an edit button on Twitter and he's so desperate for people to like him that he spends $3 billion on Twitter just to put an edit button on there so people will like him more. I mean, tell me you're insecure without telling me, right? But I actually think this could have serious consequences in the real world, and it might even affect the elections, the midterm elections in November. So this video is going to have three parts. Part one is who Elon Musk is. Part two is why that increases the odds of disinformation spreading on Twitter. And part three is how this affects the real world. You see, Elon Musk is part of this increasingly right-leaning group of almost exclusively white guys who think that they're like anti-censorship or anti-woke or anti-cancel culture, whatever they call it. What that really means is they just hate progress and they want to be able to say hate speech without getting canceled for it. That's all that means. When someone says they're anti-woke, all that means is they refuse to put in even the smallest amount of effort to have just basic empathy for other human beings. People like Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, for example. And I could end this part here because he's pretty clearly just in this group of people. I don't really have to make the case for it as there isn't any evidence otherwise. But we're still going to look at some examples, and you're going to notice an important theme here, which is how emotionally stunted this guy is. So the first one is this tweet where he's just being a general child. Starlink has been told by some governments, not Ukraine, to block Russian news sources. We will not do so unless at gunpoint. Sorry to be a free speech absolutist. Oh. And this is just so cringe. Like, you're obviously not sorry. You're just acting like a 12-year-old. But he's saying, he cares about free speech, blah, 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 whatever. Anyways, the next one is 3 days after news broke that his ex-girlfriend Grimes was dating a trans woman, he posted not one, but two transphobic memes. The first one is this I support the current thing meme, which has this incel meme guy holding the Ukrainian flag, and the background is all these other flags of tolerance, like the gay pride flag and the trans one. And this is making fun of woke people and implying that they only support things if everyone else is, like they only support what's trendy, and that they don't think for themselves, as if there hasn't been an ongoing battle for gay rights in this country for the last 30 years, as if it's wrong to care for all the innocent civilians getting straight up executed in Ukraine. And again, this just shows how immature this guy is. This is literally a meme for children. Of course, it uses this Reddit incel meme guy. Anyways, the next one says, Netflix waiting for the war to end to make a movie about a black Ukraine guy falls in love with a transgender Russian soldier. And then it has Pablo Escobar here, and it looks like it's been edited for him to have breasts, and like he's supposed to be an overweight woman, I guess, which is just so hateful. And I don't know what this grammar error is supposed to be. It's just part of the meme. And this is, of course, transphobic and racist, which is exactly what I'm talking about. This isn't even a joke. It's just mocking people who aren't straight and white. You're not anti-woke or anti-cancel culture. You're just being an asshole, and you want to keep being an asshole. And so the context here of posting this 3 days after finding out your ex is now dating a trans woman just shows how emotionally stunted this guy really is. So with this stuff, just posting memes, I can kind of see it from both sides. The sensitive part of me sees this and thinks, wow, 1 million people liked this. That means they laughed at it or thought it was funny. And now 1 million people feel just that little bit more comfortable dehumanizing trans people and being racist. But then the other part of me is like, Connor, it's just a meme on Twitter. It's not that big of a deal. And so while you can probably start to see where I'm going with this, there is one other aspect of Elon I want to talk about, which is how controlling he is. There's a lot of evidence of him being like a hyper-controlling dictator CEO at Tesla and SpaceX. Like he just fires people on the spot if they disagree with him. And so I just wanted to include that in this first part also. Part 2 is the reason having someone like this on Twitter's board of directors increases the odds of disinformation spreading on the platform is that these are the exact type of people who are the most susceptible to falling for disinformation. They're so unself-aware, they think they're the least biased and the most rational, when almost always they're the most biased and the least rational. What they do is they believe they're thinking for themselves, which is a really powerful psychological mechanism because it basically makes it impossible to be self-aware. Because they believe that they're thinking for themselves, they are incapable of realizing that they're not. And that is the exact type of person that falls for disinformation. Someone who is so unself-aware that they never realize they're being lied to. To put it another way, they believe they see the world objectively, so they never think to examine the lens through which they see the world. So they don't even realize that there's a lens there in the first place. A great example is COVID. They think that woke people and everyone else, they're just doing what everyone is doing. Like, oh, look at them, they're just getting the vaccine. I'm not like that. They think that they're consistent and they're the constant and everyone else is changing and just going with the flow, when really they're the ones who have changed because we've all been getting vaccinated for our entire lives. Everyone has the smallpox vaccine, everyone has the polio vaccine, and we've all been getting the flu vaccine every single year. The science has not changed. The only people who randomly changed their mind about the vaccines were the ones who were dumb enough to believe the disinformation about them. They're like conspiracy theorists, and Joe Rogan actually is one, right? They don't want to be right, they just want to feel right. They want to think, oh, I have the truth, but all those people over there, they don't know. Like, they just want to feel special. And this relates back to the first part, because the people who think like this, the people who think that they're like anti-woke or anti-censorship or whatever, they all think the exact same way. They use the exact same thought process. They see what other people are doing, and then they have an emotional reaction to it. And then because they believe that they're being objective and logical, they never realize that their reaction was based on emotion and not logic. And Elon Musk, as smart as he is, he's already shown that he's susceptible to falling into this sort of cycle, this sort of thought process, and falling for disinformation. In March 2020, he predicted that COVID would be over by the end of April 2020, 2 years ago. And then in March 2021, he said that the second dose might be dangerous, or that there might be some debate about whether to get it or not. Again, despite all the science indicating that COVID was going to last like a year, and despite all the science showing that the vaccines were safe, Elon Musk is out here spewing the same bullshit as Joe Rogan, and showing that he's prone to falling for COVID disinformation. Now imagine if he had been on the board of directors during COVID. Because remember, he will try to maximize his influence and control at Twitter. He would have tried to keep it from censoring vaccine disinformation and expose that many more people to it, and increase the chances that less people would get the vaccine. Which brings me to my last point. Now you might be thinking, okay Connor, you've shown that Elon Musk thinks like all these other right-wing trolls, and that he's susceptible to falling for disinformation. So now that he's on Twitter's board of directors, disinformation is much more likely to spread on Twitter. What does this have to do with the midterms? So the thing about Twitter is that even though it might not seem like there are that many people on it, all the reporters and journalists and people who make the news are. And this might be shocking to you, but these news people, they rarely think for themselves and tend to just say whatever everyone else is thinking. And because all the people who make the news are on Twitter, if something is on Twitter, circulating on it, then it's much more likely to end up on the news. And that has a huge impact on the real world because people read and watch the news. And so what I'm most worried about is Trump and the GOP's rampant lies about election fraud and how the 2020 election was stolen. Lies that were directly responsible for those, terrorists attacking the Capitol on January 6th. The case could easily be made that if Trump had been banned from Twitter and Facebook in November 2020, then January 6th would never have happened. I saw a study that said, and this is from the Washington Post, so, take your heart medicine for all the pounds of grains of salt you got to take when reading the Washington Post. But I believe this study. Online misinformation about election fraud plunged 73% after several social media sites suspended President Trump last week, research firm Signal Labs has found. The new research reported that conversations about election fraud dropped from 2.5 million mentions to 690,000 mentions across several social media sites in the week after Trump was banned from Twitter. Now, 73%, that's a huge difference. With less lies about election fraud on Twitter, less of it gets covered in the news, less people are exposed to them, and less people are likely to believe that the 2020 election was stolen. And just to be crystal clear, the less people who think that the election was stolen, then the less psychos there are who are going to go storm the Capitol like the fucking Taliban and try and overturn the election. And so today there really isn't that much disinformation on Twitter, which is a very good thing. But I'm worried that if he lets all that misinformation and lies and propaganda back on Twitter before November, because he's a free speech absolutist, something he's sorry about, by the way, then untold millions more people will be exposed to it, and that puts our elections, at risk. Remember, people died on January 6th. Allowing election disinformation to flow freely weakens our democracy and puts people's physical safety at risk. So at this point, I want to make two things clear. One, I'm not trying to quantify this or say that it will be like a hard and fast series of events. I'm not saying that because Elon Musk is on the board of directors, he will let Trump back on Twitter, and there will be exactly a 73% increase in disinformation, and people are going to attack the Capitol again. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't even think that's likely. I'm just saying that the odds have now increased. It's impossible to say by how much, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but they've definitely increased. And number two, Elon Musk has never been connected in any way to the lies about the 2020 election. I want to be clear about that. He's right up to the line. He's in that same group of people, the anti-woke, anti-censorship, conservative-leaning people who think they see the world without bias, but they are in fact so biased that they basically can't even see reality for what it is. But he has never promoted election disinformation. So what I'm saying in this video is just speculation, and it's what I'm worried about. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's possible. The good news is that Twitter is a publicly traded company and has an obligation to its shareholders to keep making money and increasing in value. And so if you look at Facebook, it's basically allowed itself to become a breeding ground for hate speech and right-wing propaganda. And as a result, it's been losing users and its stock price has plummeted. I'm pretty sure it had the biggest one-day drop in value in stock market history. So in theory, Twitter could be incentivized to avoid doing the same thing and instead limit the spread of disinformation. But at the end of the day, only time will tell. I really hope they do, but we'll see. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. I'm still this channel's still really new, so every single view means a lot to me. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you're just hate watching this, then thank you for watching all the way to the end anyways, because it still helps me. Either way, thanks for watching. See ya.